Here we're going to have a look at naming aromatic compounds, and we're going to look at two different ways in which we can name these aromatic compounds depending on whether we've got a higher or a lower priority group to benzene attached to the benzene ring. I'm going to start by looking at when we've got lower priority groups attached to the ring. If that's the case, then the benzene ring gets priority, and the suffix, that is the bit that comes at the end of the name, remember, is simply benzene. So benzene will be my suffix. And examples of this would be compounds like this molecule here. So this here would be, for example, nitro groups have got a lower priority than benzene, and this there will be called nitro. That's my prefix. Then my suffix there would be the benzene. Other examples would include, if I've got a halogen atom attached, for example chlorine, this would be chlorobenzene, with benzene again being my suffix. Another example would be if I had a molecule such as this here, and this would be methyl benzene. We also should be able to name these benzene compounds if we've got more than one thing attached to the benzene ring. So for example, if I've got two chlorines attached to the ring, we now have to give the relative positions of these chlorines to each other, and we give one of these one of the carbons that's bonded to the chlorines the number 1. Therefore we go around here, and this would give us then, if we look, we've got a chlorine attached to carbon 1, a chlorine attached to carbon 3. This then gives me 1,3 dichlorobenzene. And obviously we need to number it, in this example, clockwise, to give this 1 and the 3 the lowest, this 3 in effect the lowest number. If we numbered it this way, then you would get 1,5 dichlorobenzene, which is basically the same as 1,3. So basically 1,5 dichlorobenzene doesn't exist because it's the same as 1,3 dichlorobenzene. Let's have a look at one last example of these. We could get a compound which looked like this. Again, if I've got multiple groups attached to the benzene ring, then I'm hoping we can now figure out what this would be called. This would be carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. In reality, it wouldn't make any difference which way around we numbered that. We should get the same name no matter what. That should be 1, 3, 5 trinitrobenzene. So that's a quick look at what we would get if we had lower priority groups attached to the benzene ring. The benzene is a suffix that comes at the end of the name, and we've also looked at when we've got more than one of these lower priority groups attached to the ring. Let's have a look at if we've got higher priority groups now attached to the ring. Now, again, we'll give some examples. If we've got a higher priority group attached to the ring, now it doesn't have the suffix now, it has a prefix, and the prefix now is we treat it basically as like an alkyl group, like a methyl and ethyl group. We call it a phenyl group. So this now is a prefix of phenyl. So some examples would include, this is an amine, so this would be phenyl amine, where we've got a phenyl now as a prefix. Another example would be something like, if we've got a ketone, well, this is carbon 1, carbon 2, and what we'd have there is something called phenyl. That's my phenyl group, and it's attached to a ketone with 2 carbons. This is actually called phenylmethanone. So my phenyl again is my prefix. Other examples would include, and this molecule is actually not called a phenyl, because if I've got an OH, we don't call that a phenylol. This is actually called, simply just called phenol. It's unlikely to be asked to name that molecule though. Now there is an exception, as there always seems to be in chemistry. There's always an exception to the rule. If you've got this compound here, you would expect this compound here to be named phenyl, and then because I've got 1 carbon here, you'd expect this to be called phenylmethanoic acid. Again, that's my phenyl. But for some reason, which I do not know, possibly historical reasons, this is actually called simply benzoic acid, and it's a kind of an exception to the rule. So if you've got a COOH group directly attached to the ring, it's called phenylmethanoic. It's not called phenylmethanoic acid, it's called benzoic acid. And therefore salts of benzoic acid called benzoate salts. Interestingly, because if this now, let's just say that we replaced this with a CH2, then that would be actually called, if you were to name this, that would be actually called then phenyl ethanoic acid. So that molecule is phenyl 1, 2, that's my eth, and my phenyl group's attached to ethanoic acid. That's phenyl ethanoic acid. We're going to have a look at naming a couple of alcohols. Now, if you've got this molecule here, and we've got the alcohol would have priority, and as such, that carbon here, this carbon here, will be carbon 1. And because there's only 2 carbons, we kind of assume that the alcohol is on carbon 1. So we need to say where the phenyl group is. So if you're going to name this, this would be named 1 phenyl ethanol. So that's 1 phenyl ethanol. And that's opposed to this molecule here, well, again, the carbon bond to the alcohol is going to be carbon 1. So I'm hoping you can see now this would be 2 phenyl ethanol. So I've gone through a little bit of the nomenclature of naming aromatic compounds. Again, this is something that you get used to with practice. I will actually just give you one more, which does crop up quite a lot, and it's this molecule here, and it's one that people do find difficult. If we were to ask to name this, this molecule here. Now what we've got here is, because we've got this NCO group, this is now an amide. And remember, when we're naming amides, we have to look at this is an N-substituted amide. We have to look at what's attached to the N. Now let's just imagine that this was, for example, a CH3 group. Now we should be able to name that molecule. That there, if we were to name it, would be N-methyl. So I've got a methyl group here attached to my nitrogen. That would be N-methyl ethanamide. Again, the eth bit here is because I've got 2 carbons here. And the N-methyl is because I would have methyl on the nitrogen. So if I was now to name this molecule, let's go back to what we were looking at. If we were going to name this molecule here, and again, I'm hoping we can see again it's an amide, and I should really, if I'm going to be really precise, I should really always name that carbon 1 and that carbon 2. Here we've got a phenyl group. This is a phenyl group attached to the N. So the name of this molecule then would be N-phenyl ethanamide. And that is a common one. They do like to ask that one, so please do be aware. Again, my phenyl group has got the prefix there, so that's N-phenylmethanoic. So we've had a look at naming aromatics. We've got where we've got lower priority groups attached to the ring. There, the suffix is benzene. If you've got higher priority groups attached to the ring, then we usually have phenyl as the prefix, but just be aware that if it's a COOH, then it's simply benzoic acid. And that is a little bit of information there about how we would name aromatic compounds.